Hi, you guys. I promised Patty that I'd give her a recording of our love story because she knows that I will never sit down and type it out. I don't type anything I don't have to. I actually hate to type and I'm very bad at it. I'm in my truck waiting at Target to get some things from the pharmacy and I had a couple of minutes. So, where to start? I met my husband in the spring of 1988, but I don't remember it. I had moved to a new high school across the county we lived in, and I didn't like the school, and I only knew like one or two girls, and I didn't have any friends, and Terry was in one of the classrooms talking to a teacher one day when I was in there. I don't remember meeting him much that day, a brief conversation, nothing major. On the end of the school year, Terry went ahead and went to basic training before his senior year in high school, and I went off and did my own thing. And as the school year began in 1988, I was a senior, and Terry was as well. And I only had about 3 friends at that point in the district, and it was a very large school district. It wasn't a little school district. And my husband knew one of the people that knew me, but he couldn't remember my name. So, and it's Colleen, which I'm not thinking is very hard, but it was. So he couldn't find my name, and I had gone to school, and I'll never forget, it was September 4th that year. I had gone to the George Michael concert. So the next morning, September 5th, I was wearing my George Michael t-shirt. And I'm walking down the hallway at the end of the school day, and someone started yelling down the hallway. And this was, it was empty at this point. I had gone back to get a book I had forgotten. And I hear, George, George, hey George. And I didn't know who it was. And I still don't know what inspired my husband to start yelling George down the hallway. But because he had seen the t-shirt, he figured eventually I would at least turn around to see what anyone was saying. So I turned around and he goes, yeah, you, George. And I'm like, me? I'm not George. But he came down the hallway and he goes, I was watching you walk down the hallway. And I'm like, okay. So he started talking to me, and he's like, yeah, I'm friends with Danny, which was, I guess, a mutual friend of ours. I was like, oh, okay. So he started walking with me. He goes, so what do you do after school? And I told him, you know, I was working in a pizza shop, and I was there until 11 at night. So he shows up at the pizza shop. And he started bugging me. He's like, you have to go out with me. You have to go out with me. And I told him, I don't date guys like you, which I did not. He was one of those, you remember the first Hot Topic generation with the eyeliner and the Cure look with the crazy hair and everything? Well, that's what he was like, and I did not date people like that. So I said to him no, and I thought he was playing, and he kept bugging me. He'd show up where I worked almost every day. He'd be like, you have to go out with me. And I'm like, no. And then he goes, you're going to marry me. No. So finally, I agreed to go out with him, and I told him, I'll go out with you one time if you will leave me alone. And he goes, that's fine. You can go out with me because you'll never go out with anyone else. So I did go out with him. At the time, my father was a chef in downtown Pittsburgh, and they had just opened a very nice restaurant. And this was November, so they had done the light up in downtown, and my husband took me to his restaurant and bought me dinner. And then in Pittsburgh, it's right off of Mount Washington, and you can take an incline up the mountain, and you can see the whole city. You can see Point State Park and the rivers and the whole bit. So my husband took me up the mountainside on the incline, and we walked the city. We didn't drive at the time. We took a bus into the city. Neither one of us drove. And we walked up and down the streets, looking down on the river and all the lights, and it was beautiful. And he was right. I've never gone out with anyone else since that day. But I found out actually on Groundhog's Day of 1989 that I was pregnant, and it was not at all what I had thought would happen with my life. I was going to college. I'm from a difficult background, and it wasn't a good family situation, and college was my escape out of what I was doing. And I had a scholarship, so I was partially paid for. I was an honors student, and I was devastated, and I wasn't ready to have a baby, I didn't think. And my husband, from that moment on, he was like, you'll just marry me. And my father wanted me to give my son up for adoption. And I didn't know if that was the answer. I didn't know who to listen to or how. So one day, my husband looks at me and goes, fine, you go off to college. I was going to go to Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And he said, you go off to school. He goes, you do what you need to do. He said, and I'll take care of the baby. He said, and then he goes, I'll be in the Army. He said, and then when you're ready, you come back and I'll marry you. It was never a matter of if you want to. It was just when you're ready, you come back and I'll marry you. Do what you need to do. He said, but I'll raise our child. And I think that was the thing that made me realize that he was a forever kind of guy. He wasn't just playing games. He had thought about it. So we graduated June 8th. I think it was the 8th. I can't remember the date. But we were married June 16th. It was actually 3 days before my 18th birthday. It's September 20th. I had my son Joshua, and my husband left the same day. He went to AIT. He actually had to be sent back from the MEP station in order to be there for our son's birth. So he left, and it was a hard thing because not only did he go to AIT, but then he got orders to Korea, and back then Korea wasn't even mechanized in half of the places, so it was a hardship tour. So it was a year alone, and here I was 18 with a baby. I didn't see him except for 5 days that whole year because back then you also had to pay for everything. And you couldn't talk to him because the phone calls were $100. At the end of that tour, he got orders to Fort Riley, and we both decided, okay, I'll move out there and I'll join him. So he got out there, and he got us an apartment, and he said, okay, come on out, you know, it'll be fine. And at the time, they were gearing up for Desert Storm, but Terry had spent a year in Korea, and it was a hardship, so they weren't going to send him. Well, while I was on the train going out to Fort Riley, we found out that my husband would deploy, so 10 days later, he left for Desert Storm. By my second anniversary, I had been alone 19 months with a baby, and I had learned how to drive, and it was just terrible because I had never driven before. And back then, family support was, if we wanted you to have a family, we would have issued them, so it was a growing experience. We've had some very difficult times. My husband actually returned from Desert Storm with a lot of emotional problems, and he went through the treatment then. And in May of 2004, after we had gone through an unbelievable amount of things, we nearly divorced at one point. We had all 3 children by the time I was 22. But after that, he decided we'd get things right. So we started really working on our life. And he deployed in March of 2004 and was severely injured in May. He came home. I had been married for 15 years at that point, and everyone says, well, that's better. I don't know, because the man that came home isn't at all like the one that left. So we started all over again at the same time dealing with all his injuries and the military. Fast forward to now. We've now been almost 9 years post-injury. I've been married 24 years. I have an adult son who is married. He is 23. He was just ordained December 30th as a minister. He has the most incredible wife. I have a 20-year-old daughter. Her name is Janelle. She's a chef. Joshua's my oldest. Janelle is a chef in Salado, which is a very nice little town. And she is also a student at the Art Institute for Culinary Arts. And then my youngest, Jordan, is actually 18 and a half roughly. She's living in Louisville, and she is in a ministry program while she's attending school online. So I just want to tell you guys that you can have a bad beginning and a wonderful, wonderful story still, and you can really stick it out. Most people are divorced by this point after the injury and the kids, and we've been through everything with we had one that, you know, got really sick and they thought she had cancer. We've had my health problems. We've had all of that, but it's amazing what a real commitment to one another and realistic expectations can be, and learning and educating yourself about the TBI and the PTSD. And my husband also had numerous physical injuries. He had his jaw amputated and rebuilt out of his fibula and all kinds of crazy stuff. But you can do it. And that's my love story, Patty, and there it is, and this is a really long video. But I hope someone gets something out of it, because my facing the injury with my husband wasn't the hardest things we faced. It's just a part of the story. Have a great night, you guys. Bye.